Some funny stories please, as I need cheering up part 2. Around 35 years ago my dad was driving our family home from visiting my grandparents, who lived a couple of hours away on the coast. Beautiful country roads with little traffic, so my dad felt safe going a little faster than he probably should have done. Anyway, me and my 2 younger sisters were all fast asleep in the back seat when a loud bang suddenly woke us up, and my dad slowed the car to a stop from whatever speed he'd been doing. I don't quite remember the conversation with my mum, who was quite angry with him, but my dad got out of the car and started pulling at something from under the front bonnet, while grunting and swearing about bloody birds. I'll never forget my mother turning from her anger to howls of laughter when my dad finally pulled out a stump with a pair of bloody legs and showed them to us. Apparently the rest of the pheasant had become wedged quite solidly into the radiator grill, smelled quite funky the rest of the way home that night. My daughter was 4 and had just started school. I got home from a night shift, made myself a cup of tea, and got a Kit Kat Chunky from the cupboard. It was only a couple of hours until I'd have to take her school, so I was planning on staying up and then sleeping after I'd dropped her off at school. Instead, I got into bed, unwrapped the Kit Kat Chunky, and fell asleep. My daughter wakes me and notices there is brown stuff all over my white bedding. I'd fallen asleep before eating the chocolate, and my body heat had melted it, and it got everywhere. I thought it's just best to ignore it. However, she told everyone at school about it, her teacher, the dinner ladies, the head teacher. But because she didn't know it was chocolate, she thought it must be poo, and so all the adults at her school thought I'd shit the bed and rolled around it in. It's funny now, but at the time, it was mortifying. A few years ago, our cat became pretty sick. One of his symptoms was uncontrollable diarrhea. I had booked him in to see the vet, and my brother came along holding the cat carrier with Polo our cat inside. A literal 5-minute drive down the road. On arrival at the car park, Polo let out a warning cry, and an unholy-sounding grumble came from the depths of his belly. I knew we were fucked if we weren't quick to get him out of my car. My brother, however, did not know this. In his grandpa's speed, he realized his mistake as the contents of Palos brown-colored spray peppered him through the cat carrier. What followed will haunt me forever, because in my brother's genius mind, he decided to then try and get Polo out of the carrier by placing it on my passenger seat and releasing the very cute and yet shit-soden rat into my car. The result, the most cuttest shit paw prints you've ever seen decorating my car like a 3-year-old being released with crayons and a have-at-it attitude. Thankfully, the vet took him in shit covered and all, and did an amazing job at cleaning both him and the carrier. As for my car, it had a very thorough deep clean with a peg-on nose and a true test of vomiting duress. My daughter was 4 and had just started school. I got home from a night shift, made myself a cup of tea, and got a Kit Kat Chunky from the cupboard. It was only a couple of hours until I'd have to take her school, so I was planning on staying up and then sleeping after I'd dropped her off at school. Instead, I got into bed, unwrapped the Kit Kat Chunky, and fell asleep. My daughter wakes me and notices there is brown stuff all over my white bedding. I'd fallen asleep before eating the chocolate, and my body heat had melted it, and it got everywhere. I thought it's just best to ignore it. However, she told everyone at school about it, her teacher, the dinner ladies, the head teacher. But because she didn't know it was chocolate, she thought it must be poo, and so all the adults at her school thought I'd shit the bed and rolled around it in. It's funny now, but at the time, it was mortifying. A few years ago, our cat became pretty sick. One of his symptoms was uncontrollable diarrhea. I had booked him in to see the vet, and my brother came along holding the cat carrier with Polo our cat inside. A literal 5-minute drive down the road. On arrival at the car park, Polo let out a warning cry, and an unholy-sounding grumble came from the depths of his belly. I knew we were fucked if we weren't quick to get him out of my car. My brother, however, did not know this. In his grandpa's speed, he realized his mistake as the contents of Palos brown-colored spray peppered him through the cat carrier. What followed will haunt me forever, because in my brother's genius mind, he decided to then try and get Polo out of the carrier by placing it on my passenger seat and releasing the very cute and yet shit-soden rat into my car. The result, the most cuttest shit paw prints you've ever seen decorating my car like a 3-year-old being released with crayons and a have-at-it attitude. Thankfully, the vet took him in shit covered and all, and did an amazing job at cleaning both him and the carrier. As for my car, it had a very thorough deep clean with a peg on nose and a true test of vomiting duress. So me and my fiance went outside to smoke AJ, and we saw a guy coming down our way on a bike. We didn't think anything of it. As my fiance was lighting it up, this man stops dead in his tracks and goes, "Are you smoking marijuana?" in a very funny tone of voice. We were like, "Yeah, you want some?" And he kinda just brushed it off. Then he asks us, "I have a very important question," and he asks us, "Do you feel better than you did 2 days ago?" It took a second to process what he said, and we were both very confused. Then he turned to me and asked the same question. I didn't say anything, and he was like, "It's just for the boys," and then he pointed at the J and was like, "What percent is it?" And we just made up a percentage. Then he hit it twice and said, "You don't gotta worry, cause I studied on how women fight and whatever," and at this point you can hear how fucked up he sounded. Then he goes, "I have another question," and then proceeds to say there's 2 paths and one has obstacles. Which path gets you to the frog fastest? And we were like, "Dude, we have no idea," and again he said, "It's just for the brothers." And then he asked us if there was a way out of our apartment complex, and so we showed him where. This dude was probably riding around in circles for who knows how long. Then he asked my fiance if he wanted a beer, and he said, "No thanks, I don't drink," and he asked me, and I said no. Then he asked my fiance again, and he explained how his family are alcoholics, so he doesn't like to drink, and the dude goes, "Where is this coming from?" Shortly after, he offered us tinfoil hats to buy, and then we made an excuse to go back inside. This was only about 2 weeks ago, and I still think about it every day. I had nipped into a wee neighboring town, and a new Iceland had opened there, a UK frozen food store. I thought I'd drop in to get some shopping before heading home. I walk up to the entrance and patiently wait for the glass double-sliding doors to open. They don't. Confused, I hesitate, staring at the doors, wondering what was wrong with them. They should be working perfectly, given it's a brand new shop. A woman comes up behind me, and I turn around to moan. Brand new shop, and their doors aren't working. I complain, motioning my hand towards the frame. She throws me a confused look as she slowly walks around me, pushing the glass door wide open as she did so, and saunters through. Yes, I had stood outside a two-way push-open double door, thinking it was a motion, open sliding entrance. I creased up laughing at myself and carried on through behind her. What a dafty I am. Back when I was a teenager, drinking a half bottle of wine in my bedroom. After been drinking the whole day, I'm watching something on TV and need to piss, so I spy the now empty wine bottle and think I'll save myself a trip downstairs to the toilet and piss in that. Also being drunk, I didn't want to carry this bottle anywhere at that moment in time, so I stuck this warm bottle of piss into my brother's mini fridge, which he kept his drink in, thinking he'll get it later before he comes back, as he was away. So of course, I fall asleep blazing. The next night, I'm out the shower, changed into good clothes, ready to go out, and I think, right time for a quick drink of something. Before I head on out, what have we got in the cooler? And I spy the half bottle of wine, which by this time seems like one of my regular half bottles, as it's full, so I think happy days. It's lovely and cool, and I'm ready to get stuck in well as you can. Guess the lid came off, and I was chugging it down surprisingly 2 or 3 big swallows before I noticed how flat and piss poor it was. Then the penny dropped, and the memories from the previous night came to the surface, so I splattered it over the bedroom wall along with some vomit in there, and sank into a type of depression. That was the one and only time I did that in the house anyway. LOL. Just try reading this without laughing till you cry. Pocket Taser stun gun. A great gift for the wife. A guy who purchased his lovely wife a pocket taser for their anniversary submitted this. Last weekend, I saw something at Larry's Pistol and Pawn Shop that sparked my interest. The occasion was our 15th anniversary, and I was looking for a little something extra for my wife Julie. What I came across was a 100,000 volt pocket, purse-sized taser. The effects of the taser were supposed to be short-lived, with no long-term adverse effect on your assailant, allowing her adequate time to retreat to safety. Way to cool. Long story short, I bought the device and brought it home. I loaded 2 AAA batteries in the darn thing and pushed the button. Nothing. I was disappointed. I learned however, that if I pushed the button and pressed it against a metal surface at the same time, I'd get the blue arc of electricity darting back and forth between the prongs. Awesome. Unfortunately, I have yet to explain to Julie what that burn spot is on the face of her microwave. Okay, so I was home alone with this new toy, thinking to myself that it couldn't be all that bad with only 2 AAA batteries. Right there I sat in my recliner, my cat Gracie looking on intently, trusting little soul, while I was reading the directions and thinking that I really needed to try this thing out on a flesh and blood moving target. I must admit, I thought about zapping Gracie for a fraction of a second and then thought better of it. She is such a sweet cat. But if I was going to give this thing to my wife to protect herself against a mugger, I did want some assurance that it would work as advertised. Am I wrong? So, there I sat in a pair of shorts and a tank top with my reading glasses perched delicately on the bridge of my nose, directions in one hand, and taser in another. The directions said that a 1-second burst would shock and disorient your assailant. A 2-second burst was supposed to cause muscle spasms and a major loss of bodily control. And a 3-second burst would purportedly make your assailant flop on the ground like a fish out of water. Any burst longer than 3 seconds would be wasting the batteries. All the while I'm looking at this little device measuring about 5 inches long, less than 3/4 inch in circumference, loaded with 2 itsy bitsy AAA batteries. Cute really, and thinking to myself, no possible way. What happened next is almost beyond description, but I'll do my best. I'm sitting there alone, Gracie looking on with her head cocked to one side so as to say, "Don't do it, stupid." Reasoning that a 1-second burst from such a tiny little old thing couldn't hurt all that bad, I decided to give myself a 1-second burst just for heck of it. I touched the prongs to my naked thigh, pushed the button, and holy mother of God, weapons of mass destruction, what the I'm pretty sure Hulk Hogan ran in through the side door, picked me up in the recliner, then body slammed us both on the carpet. Over and over and over again. I vaguely recall waking up on my side in the fetal position, with tears in my eyes, body soaking wet, both nipples on fire, testicles nowhere to be found, with my left arm tucked under my body in the oddest position, and tingling in my legs. The cat was making meowing sounds I had never heard before, clinging to a picture frame hanging above the fireplace, obviously in an attempt to avoid getting slammed by my body flopping all over the living room. Note, if you ever feel compelled to mug yourself with a taser, one note of caution, there is nitrogen monoxide such thing as a 1-second burst. When you zap yourself you will not let go of that thing until it is dislodged from your hand by a violent thrashing about on the floor. 3-second burst would be considered conservative. A minute or so later I can't be sure, as time was a relative thing at that point. I collected my wits, what little I had left, sat up and surveyed the landscape. My bent reading glasses were on the mantel of the fireplace. The recliner was upside down, and about 8 feet or so from where it originally was. My triceps, right thigh, and both nipples were still twitching. My face felt like it had been shot up with Novocaine, and my bottom lip weighed 88 pounds. I had no control over the drooling. Apparently, I had crapped in my shorts, but was too numb to know for sure, and my sense of smell was gone. I saw a faint smoke cloud above my head, which I believe came from my hair. I'm still looking for my testicles, and I'm offering a significant reward for their safe return. P.S. My wife can't stop laughing about my experience. Loved the gift and now regularly threatens me with it. If you think education is difficult, try being stupid. Alright, here's a story from years back. We used to live in a tiny village about 10 miles or so from the nearest city center. I used to go out drinking in the city center with a buddy of mine at the time, and we used to get really drunk early on by visiting wherever bar had a happy hour. Usually Weatherspoons, then wander around drinking here and there until we would share a taxi home at the end of the night. On this particular night, we'd been at it from early doors, and by about 9 I was wonkered. So I went out of the bar we were in for a fag, as I used to smoke, while he stayed inside. I went to go back in, but they wouldn't let me as I was too drunk. I thought, oh well, I'll get a taxi home instead, as I couldn't get hold of my mate, as it was before mobiles were really as accessible as they are now. I went to the taxi rank, but due to my state, I was unable to get any taxi to take me, so I thought, fuck, what am I going to do? Anyway, for young people in a metro pulled up and said, "What's up, mate?" So I explained to them my predicament, and they said, "Where do you live?" So I said, "Oh, it's blah blah," and they said, "Well, where's that?" I said, "Oh, not far." They said, "Well, give us £15 and we will drop you home." I said, "Are you sure?" They were like, "Yeah, no worries." I got in the back with 2 girls and there were 2 lads up front, but bear in mind it was a metro, so it was cramped and on its arse with 5 people in it. Well, it was obviously much farther than they thought, and I had to keep saying, "Yeah, just a few more minutes. Not much farther," etc. At about the halfway point I realized I was breaking my neck for a piss, and I literally couldn't hold it, but I thought, well, if I get them to let me out, they'll fuck off and leave me stranded on the moors or fuck knows where, and I was in no fit state to be able to walk home. I couldn't hold it, so I just had to let go. It was a big one, and I could feel it running down my jeans and into the seat. Eventually we get to my village, and I got them to drop me off in the main street a good way away from my house. Thanked them and ran off before the girls could spread back out and into the unexpected puddle I'd left on the seat. I hope they can forgive me, I really couldn't hold it any longer. Anyway, that's my funny story, and please don't tell your mother. So, myself and my husband were out one evening a couple of years ago. Sat in the car chatting down by the water park outside a pub. My husband is one of these people who likes to help all animals or insects that he can. So you can imagine how this story may turn out. We heard a thud, so we got out of the car and a pheasant had flown into the wall of the pub and landed on the floor. So my husband immediately went up to it to see how it was. This is not an area where you would normally see a pheasant. The pheasant was fine, was just a bit dazed and in shock. My husband decided we should try and take it to a more pheasant-appropriate place in the car. This would be around a 15-minute drive. So I agreed as I felt sorry for it. The plan was, my husband was to wrap the pheasant up in his jacket and I was to have the pheasant on my lap. So we did. Well, we got about 10 minutes up the road and the pheasant was still in shock and sat still on my lap. My husband decides it's cold and without warning, puts on the fan in the car. The pheasant shit itself. It was flying around the car. I was screaming and my husband was still trying to drive. It was flapping all over the car, pooping as it went. My husband pulled over to the nearest area with grass and trees, and we opened the car door to get the pheasant out. Well, that was another 20-minute job. I know. I cannot believe this story is true either. But believe me, it is not an experience I want again. I was on a train waiting for it to leave the station. I heard some teenage girls laughing and dicking about on the platform and thought nothing of it. Until I heard a commotion move along the carriage getting closer and closer. The train pulled out of the station, and by this point, some people were yelping and others were laughing. I looked down at my feet, and there's a baby seagull. All gray feathers, some still quite fluffy, and the sort of age you see them walking around as they haven't learned to fly yet. The teenage girls had chased it from the platform and onto the train. It decided to wander its way up the carriage, surprising and scaring people as it did. And for some reason it stopped when it got to me. A few of the other passengers noticed it had stopped and was staring at me. Then came the "You've got a new friend. And what are you gonna do now?" comments. I wasn't planning on doing anything, but this little thing wouldn't leave my feet alone. I picked it up and was surprised at how calm it was. I put on a carrier bag on the seat next to me, and it just sat there very contentedly with me. When the conductor came past, I brought it to his attention. He said, "Give it to the guard at the next station. He'll take care of it." I genuinely believed he meant they would kill it. So I ended up taking the seagull home with me. I got a big cardboard box, filled it with dry grass clippings and moss, all I had that was soft and warm to hand, and set about trying to feed it. Cat food is the best thing to give a seagull that age. But I didn't have any and lived quite far away from any shops and didn't drive, so I found out that seagulls quite enjoy hot dogs. Baked beans. Curious. After a couple of days, I was put into contact with a local rescue, and we dropped him off at this place run by a pretty kind, but very eccentric lady. Thanks so much for rescuing him. Let's bring him to the barn to meet the others. Amongst all the cats, dogs, chickens, ducks, geese, goats, pigs, llamas, rabbits, guinea pigs, and God knows what else, this lady had about 15 baby seagulls in a barn. They had a big safe area full of straw, with a heat lamp and loads of cat food to eat. She said she just feeds them, and when they want to leave, they make their own way and fly off. I was recently partway through a 2-hour drive on the way back from a work meeting. I was very, very tired, so I stopped off at a service station for a coffee and a snack. As I went in, there were 3 of those glass automatic doors in front of me, each with one of those black sensors at the top. I went up to the nearest one, and nothing happened. I stepped back and tried again, and still nothing happened. I tried waving up at the sensor, and still nothing happened. A woman walked in and paused behind me. Being very tired and a bit annoyed, embarrassed at being ignored by a door, I turned, frowned, and said, "I don't think I exist." She gave me a slightly confused look with a hint of consternation before turning and walking up to the glass panel on the right, which immediately opened to allow her in. This poor woman had walked into his services to find a strange, confused man trying to walk through a glass, totally immobile dividing wall and babbling about not existing. I hope she got a good laugh out of that. I did.